Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chapter Tactics, episode number 211. I am your host, Magikarp Usefly, also known as Matt, and today we're going to be going over the Sisters Codex, and joining me are your regular co-hosts here. We have Demeki.
Hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
We got John P.
Hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
Good job, guys. And we have, today, Bricky has come by to talk about Sisters as well.
Y'all, how you doing, everybody?
I hate all three of you guys. And not only that, but we also have Brandon Grant coming back onto Chapter Tactics. How you doing, man?
It's good to be back, and thanks for having me.
You broke the chain.
Good. See, this guy knows what's going on. At least he's not you guys. You guys are all terrible. I hate you guys. No, I don't. I love you guys. All right. Anyways, yeah, so we're going to be talking about Sisters of Battle, their new 9th edition codex. A lot of people haven't been talking about them because of the big bads of Drakari and Admech. And then the Sisters Codex came out and it kind of just like slipped under the cracks. No one's really talking about it. A lot of people are saying that's more of a lateral move and it's kind of like the same. But I want to break it down, try to see what's going on here. We have a list that got into second place off of a recent GT that happened this weekend that we're going to break down. And yeah, we're just going to be prodding Bricky and Brandon about just prodding them about.
Please prod me.
We're gonna thank you. Thank you. That's all I want. I just want to prod you guys. But before we do that, we are still looking for a new version of the Chapter Tactics intro song. We had some entries earlier last week. They sound great. If you guys can send in some more, if you guys still want to work on it, feel free to send it over to the twitter.com/DiceCheckYT. Looking to revamp the Chapter Tactics intro for the Frontline Gaming Network. It would help out Val a lot. So if you guys like Val, help him out. And you guys might have your work forever embodied on Chapter Tactics. Now, what has happened with you guys in the last week of 40K? Now, I know that Bricky has just went to the Dice Hammer GT over in Irvine, I believe.
Mm-hmm. By like a 10-minute drive, right next to Boomer's Irvine. I saw the mini golf and everything.
Oh, dude.
Wait,
Boomers?
Like Boomers.
Yeah, like Family Fun Center.
Yeah,
No, I thought it was like another place like in Irvine called like Boomers, and that's where like old people live.
I mean,
That's
there
where
are
my brain
old
went.
people at Boomers sometimes.
Yeah.
But not this one.
Okay,
It was right next to it at a bowling alley, yeah.
nice.
And how do you do?
I felt like I did great. The last tournament I went to was pre-COVID in Temecula, and I got dead last, like actually last place out of like 20 people. And I got eighth place out of 36. And
Heck yeah.
it felt pretty good.
Heck yeah, man.
Let's
Congratulations.
go.
Thank you.
And who did you bring?
I brought Sisters of Adeptus Sororitatis. Who would have guessed?
Nice. Nice.
What a great topic. You want to talk about them?
Yeah. Oh, whoa, maybe.
Good.
Well, what about you, Brandon? How's the tournament scene been working out for you?
Well, I've got a tournament coming up next month called Hammer of Wrath up here in Los Angeles, and I'm getting ready for that with some of the new models from the updated Codex that either are in the mail or in the process of being magnetized.
Ooh.
Nice.
Oh, okay. All right. What are you getting? Worked on?
Sacrostants and Paragons are what I have my hands on now, and I'm waiting on Morven Vol.
Ooh, Morven Vol. Bricky, have you even got Morven Vol yet?
I have not got Morven Vol or the Sacristans. I would love both, but they're not there.
Dude, just live vicariously through Brandon, and then you're fine.
Yeah, Brandon, you want to swap models?
I'm good.
I assumed.
Dude, it's so hard to get them, apparently.
Apparently, saying GW has shipping problems is a common thing, but apparently, particularly a lot of the ones coming out of the UK have been very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like the UK, they're mostly fine on supplies, but in America, the sister stuff specifically is a lot harder to get.
Gotcha. All right. What about you, Demeki? How have you been doing?
I'm first place in our league right now. That's
Nice.
That feels pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, with the Death Guard. I went full tool and I brought 3 plague burst crawlers and Mortarion to almost all my matches.
Just beat on people.
Yeah,
Did.
It's pretty fun.
It's
Yeah,
all
it was
right.
pretty fun.
You'll be going up in your pod very shortly, and you'll have a harder time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're gonna be
Maybe.
fighting off like the real Drakari and Admech.
Well, so that's the thing for the next pod, or the next league, which is going to be in like 2 weeks. I'm actually switching to Drakari.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch to Drakari
Why?
because I have Drakari and I want to play him.
I respect you if you bring both your Void Raven bombers.
I might.
Bring
Because
at
you know
least
you
one.
changed the list.
Bring at least
so.
one Void Raven bomber.
Oh yeah, well they need redemption from when they played Sisters and did nothing.
Back when I used Storm of Retribution,
Yeah,
a now dead stratagem to get 36-inch range multi-melta in one tap.
yeah.
Planes.
Brandon, do you miss Storm of Retribution?
It still exists. Now it just ignores cover all the time.
Which, yeah, it's a baked-in rule for the Retributors where when they fire, they ignore cover, which, you know, it's literally just them changing the word, giving a new thing a new name or an old name. Because Storm of Retribution being gone, I am very okay with.
Yeah. Did you think that Storm of Retribution was a little bit broken, Brandon?
I thought it was probably too good to add 12 inches to multi-meltas.
And +1 damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I liked it a little bit for the reroll wounds on heavy flamers, because I liked running heavy flamers with Ebon Chalice back in the prior codex. But yeah, that was a ridiculously strong stratagem.
Yeah, it just made it hard for Games Workshop to points Meltas effectively because Retributors were just so much better with them than everything else.
Combine that with strategic reserves, rhinos. Yeah, I'm glad it's dead.
Pretty sure everyone's glad it's dead. Everyone's pretty happy about it.
Definitely glad it's dead.
What about you, John P?
Yeah. So I'm in the same league as Demeki and Matt for that. For Addies, our local LGS, our LGS. Sorry, there is something vibrating on the table.
It was not me.
I think that may have been you, Matt.
Okay, all right, I'll continue. But yeah, currently I am 2-2. Last match is against some guy that plays Tyranids named Matt.
It's true.
Coming this Saturday actually on Dice Check. But yeah, Matt and I are gonna be playing our last match this Saturday on stream, so you guys can look forward to Space Wolves versus Nids action, the classic matchup. Yeah,
Classic.
and then as Demeki mentioned, he's joined the upcoming summer league. He's gonna be playing Drakari. I'm also gonna be joining that summer league and switching armies to Admech because why not? I have just like him. I have the army and I want to play it. So. Plus, the terrain at our LGS is not very.
So you're gonna take advantage. You're gonna exploit it. Is that what's happening?
Possibly.
It's very shooter friendly.
Yeah, it's very shooty friendly.
As a Tyranids player, I can feel that. I can feel it on many levels. As for me, I played like 2 games last week for the league, and I think that was it. I went up against Drakari in a hole 2 overrun game. Oof. That was awful. Yeah. It was terrible. I like auto lost that game. It was really bad. And then I went up against Grey Knights, and then we tied, and that's been it so far. I have to play my last 2 games of the league this week. But you know what I've learned? Terrain really matters a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, Brandon, and one of the tournaments that you played, I think it was with the 8th edition Sisters. You were playing at a GT where the terrain wasn't that great. Am I correct in that?
It was mixed. So sometimes the terrain was good and sometimes it was sparse.
Yeah. How does it feel like going into a GT with like kind of sparse looking terrain? Does it tickle you a little bit? Does it like give you the jitters?
There's been some times where I've walked up to a table with my opponent and said, well, whoever goes first, we can pretty much go home after that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, it really is. It's very important.
Yeah. I just don't get why most tournament events or even leagues just don't use the WTC packet.
WTC is more for like team events and stuff. So like,
you could still use that
baseline.
packet though. Yeah. It's a good baseline.
Yeah. And then
the terrain at the Dice Hammer tournament was very much built into like a WTC thing.
Yeah.
Lots of L's, tons of forests. It was actually pretty fantastic. And definitely I could see the use for it because a lot of people were running double Volkite Contemptors, things of that nature. And it was wonderful to have my Repentia, Exorcist, etc. behind cover and not get one tapped.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, all right.
Okay, I was gonna talk about the last game I had.
Oh yeah,
actually.
yeah, go for it,
the-
man. Yeah.
The last game I had, it was against Grey Knights. The table we played was island themed, so there's absolutely no buildings. Everything was like a tree. So it was like technically everything was should have been like dense forest, but me and him just agreed to just like pick specific ones to be obscuring. And if it wasn't that way, I would have gotten shot off the board.
Yeah.
So
It's like at that point, because you're playing Grey Knights, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like at that point, why even use Astral Aim? Like,
yeah,
it's
he
just,
didn't
you
even
don't
need that
need
ability.
it.
Yeah.
Man, it sucks. It's okay. You'll just lose on Saturday, and it's fine.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
you-
easy. And then I go to pot 10.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, Bricky,
Yes, sir.
I believe that you have a fun fact for us about
do.
sisters.
So, a fun fact
If you,
for...
could, you need to talk.
Oh,
to
I
the
need to be
mic.
closer.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm not used to these. A fun fact, because you do fun facts every time, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
So a fun fact about sisters, a lot of people wonder why is their hair all white? It's actually not required. It is something they can choose to if they want. Celestine, in fact, has black hair. However, way back in their lore, when they confronted... it's called the Doge Van Dyer. So during the Reign of Blood with Doge Van Dyer, the head leader of the sisters was once called the Brides of the Emperor, was sent into the Emperor's throne room to be spoken to, along with the custodians, about why the Doge Van Dyer was the worst human imaginable. And when she went into the Emperor's throne room itself, we don't know what happened, but she entered with black hair, and she left with her hair bleached white. And so it is to honor her memory, because she is very dead, as is most of the sisters' characters, because martyrdom is kind of their thing. So, yeah, because the Emperor's horrible psychic presence, and her hair was completely bleached white, because originally she's like, I'm not going to kill Doge Van Dyer. He's our leader. And then she went in the throne room, and she came out hair white, like, all right, girls, new plan. He's the worst thing ever. I'm going to go kill him.
Oh, wow.
And then
So,
she did.
Extra details to fill in.
Ooh.
That
please.
was
Okay, yes.
Saint Catherine, who was the founder of Order of Our Martyred Lady. And they named themselves Martyred Lady after she died. And that was when only Martyred Lady dyes their hair white in her memory. So if you're a different order, don't bother painting their hair white unless you like it.
Well, some of the other orders paint their hair white in for Dominica. Like Eben Chalice still has white hair and such, but
Ooh.
the Catherine is like, well, I think Order of Our Lady, they all have it white, right? Because of the
You got
Catherine
it.
thing. Yeah. I think all of the sisters, the main six, it was Mina, Lucia, Dominica, Catherine, and then two more. Arabella. I forgot the last one.
But all normal humans who became saints once they passed.
Yes, all the matriarchs, the six matriarchs. They were really cool. They're all dead. One of them is in a coffin dance you can take on a tabletop.
Oh, the Triumph.
The Triumph of Saint Catherine.
It sounds like a cult.
Yeah, man.
That's all the Imperium is.
That's
a giant
intentional.
cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Sisters of Battle are probably the most creepy of them all. Unless you want to, Admec's pretty creepy, but
Yeah.
Beep
yeah.
boop.
Praise the
thank you,
Messiah.
John.
All right. So that's the Did You Know for this week. We do that every single week where we just talk about lore just for a little bit before we delve into the main topic here, which we are about to do. However, this show is brought to you by frontlinegaming.org, where you can get amazing game mats for not just your 40K games, but almost any tabletop game out there. Purchase miniatures at a discount and join some of the largest 40K events in the industry. They also have the largest 40K podcasting network in the business with shows like Signals from the Frontline, Chapter Tactics, which you're listening to right now, 40K Game Changers, 40K Stats Center, Grim After Dark, and so much more. That's frontlinegaming.org, or you can click on the link of the description of this podcast on all the social media goodies. Now that we have all of the upkeep out of the way, let's delve into this topic. I have a little pre-kicker here to tell you guys. So if you guys want to just, close your eyes. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes and listen to my supple voice as I go over this topic for you guys. The new Sisters Codex was released, but no one's talking about it. Is it even any good? Is there anything in it that's going to shake up the meta? Do they have answers to the big bads of Admech and Drakari? How can players utilize the Sisters Codex now with their 9th edition changes? And I think that a good intro for this topic is asking these two lovely gentlemen how the 9th edition Codex stacks up against the 8th edition Codex. And, we'll just keep an open floor with everybody to see what your guys' opinions are on that before we dive into this list from, I believe it's from Jack Harpster. So
You got it.
Well, Brandon, you are most definitely the better player than me. While I may have played more games of Ninth with the new Codex, you win and play a lot more tournaments than me. So do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts then swapping over? Because I'm of the opinion that it was a bit of more like a side grade, because Sisters were already a very good army, but I'd like to hear what you think particularly.
If anything, there's quite a few of the new units that seem to have missed the mark for me. I'm thinking of things like the Castigator battle tank, things like the changes to the Exorcist.
Oh, that one's bad.
Most vehicles.
Things like Paragon war suits. Even the
those the
Dogmata
Nundums?
was kind of just okay.
I'm actually of the opinion that Dogmata is quite good, but I'm like 75% out of 100 for you so far. Everything you've listed seem quite poor.
Yeah, and then the new lady with the banner, no one remembers her name because outside of Crusade, her rules are just not very good.
Astea Thurga and Agatha Dolan, I believe is their
Yeah,
name. Yeah,
no one cares about her.
no one does care about her.
But those are also the changes to units that did exist that nerfed them quite a bit. So you can't just push 3 units of Repentia and 3 units of Retributors across the table and expect to win.
Which
Retributors don't have 36-inch range meltas anymore. They take penalties for moving and firing heavy weapons. You have Repentia that lost their advance and charge unless they start the command phase next to a Repentia Superior, who's a 40-point character. You get fewer miracle dice now than you used to. Before, I'd finish games with handfuls of them. Now they're rarer. Miracle dice are only if you're Pure Sisters. So if you have any allies, you don't get miracles at all. Yeah, there's a lot of changes where I went, oof. Yeah, this is unpleasant.
Agreed.
But there are a few shining parts of the Codex that really stood out. And let's bring up a few of them by going over Jack Harpster's list. So
I agree. That's a good idea.
The 3 orders now that are the most popular are still Bloody Rose, even though it was slightly nerfed, but also Argent Shroud and Ebon Chalice. Argent Shroud for the ability to advance and still shoot weapons as if you didn't move, which is pretty great. And also a free reroll to hit or wound for each unit. Pretty great, especially if it's a single multi-melta in your unit. And then for Ebon Chalice, they have a bunch of abilities. The noteworthy ones are the ability to discard a miracle dice to make another miracle dice a 6, combined with their strat to, for 1 CP, make flamers do 3 flat mortal wounds if you roll enough 4-ups.
Which is basically anything that you carries flamers.
Yeah. So
it's basically point at something, do 3 mortal wounds if you have more than 2 flamers in the
do you have
squad.
2 or more flamers? Deal 3 mortals.
Basically, yes. Sorry, I keep thinking about the mic.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. So to go into Jack's list, it's a bit of a toolbox list, and it's trying to focus on not creating a Death Star, because Sisters don't do Death Stars very well. Even if you're Valorous Heart and you have ignores AP1, reduce AP2 by 1, your units aren't really that resilient because you're still T3 1 wound models at the end of the day.
And also, they nerfed the ability to easily have access to your 4-up invul save from Shield of Faith, which also makes the Death Star even less profitable.
So you can still get 4-up invuls with Sacrosants, but
they come with the base.
All across your whole army. Not anymore.
You can get the 4-up invul from Shield of Faith entirely on 1 unit, combining Indomitable Belief and the Litany of Enduring Faith, which I guess also the Angelic Visage of Seraphim and Zephyrim can get you that too, but it's not.
So you can still get a lot of it, but it's a lot of work.
And it's not this fat brick of 4-up inful, like ignore AP -1, 2, 6-up feel no pain sisters anymore that you could get.
Yeah. So
Which is good,
they're
I'd
not
say.
going to form a Death Star anytime soon.
Agreed.
Now, that means you're playing movement 40k, where you're trying to hide units from enemies until they're revealed. You're trying to outmaneuver your opponent. You're trying to expose certain units just to delete something from your opponent's list and trade well. So it's a very tactical back and forth game, kind of the way 40k is meant to be played. So to get into the list, Jack started with an Inquisitor in a patrol of Bloody Rose, and the Inquisitor is Ordo Malleus and has the 1 CP, get a Warlord trait and a relic. So his Warlord trait is he can cast 2 powers, and he knows 2 powers plus Smite. So his powers are Ignore, Overwatch, and I can't believe it's not Smite, which is an 18-inch Smite that you pick a unit. It's not just the closest, and if you roll 3d6 over their leadership, then they take d3 mortals. So that character is cool for providing mortal wounds in the psychic phase, which sisters don't normally get access to. So if you're facing Catan, for example, or Gazgul, where they can only take so many wounds per phase, it's pretty nice to be able to put out mortals when you couldn't normally. And then Terrify is nice because, again, sisters are squishy, and being able to ignore Overwatch on, say, an Admech blob is pretty powerful.
Yes, blob, robots, something of that nature. Flamers especially.
Tau.
Yeah, so
Tau in general.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, we have to deal with all the other Tau, but if you're fighting Tau at this current moment, I think you're pretty okay. Unless
Yeah.
you're just going full melee.
Well,
just remember that with Tau and Salamanders, just because the unit you're charging can't Overwatch doesn't mean their friends can't.
Very good.
is there a way for sisters to get OBSEC outside of troops?
The Dogmata.
Yes,
The Dogmata, is that what that's for?
We'll
because
get
I
to
see
that.
that this is on. Oh, okay.
Well,
there's
I
one
don't
in
wanna
this
s-
list.
I don't
We're
want to
skipping
stay.
ahead.
I don't want to stay too
So-
far into going through the entire list because we'll be on this list for like a good 30 minutes if that's the
I
case.
know, but it's so good. So
Yeah.
Morven Vol is one of the highlights that Sisters got a big boost. She's the new Supreme Commander of the Sisters of Battle and is in a Paragon Warsuit. And yeah, she hits really hard in melee and she shoots pretty okay. But her big deal is that she picks a unit in the command phase within 6 inches. So it can't be a unit that's starting the turn in a Rhino or is coming in from reserve, and she gives them full rerolls to hit and wound. And it's not order dependent. So if you need a unit to really shoot hard, you can just soup them up and then expose them and delete something. Or if you need somebody to charge in and delete something, same idea. And on Sisters, a lot of their attacks are not that strong, so giving them full rerolls is a huge boost. So Vol is very good. And then there's a Battle Sister squad of 5 with no upgrades. 2x8 Repentia, a Repentia Superior, 5 Zephyrim, and then 5 Rets with 4 Multi-Meltas and 2 Cherubs.
Interesting choice to not take a Zephyrim pendant on the Zephyrim squad.
I know.
I
But-
found that one interesting, especially because there's a couple other things in here that I think could have been dropped for it.
But when you look at the math, Zephyrim are one of the units that benefit most from Vol. They have a bunch of Strength 4 Power Sword attacks, and they have 3 attacks plus 1 for charging. So, and if they're getting the Dogmata's litany for bonus attack, that's 26 attacks from 5 models with full rerolls to hit and wound and exploding 6s to hit if you're doing it right. So that unit alone will pretty much neuter an Admech blob even through 2-up armor, ignore AP2, and 5-up invul. It's crazy. So I really like that unit.
Agreed. I'm just surprised that there's no pendant. Reroll charges is very nice.
Agreed. Now we get into Ebon Chalice is his second attachment. And Ebon Chalice is really cool for the reasons we talked about with the mortal wounds and the convert 2 miracle dice into a 6. But he brought Celestine, and Celestine is bonkers now. She's actually a melee powerhouse. She doesn't buff anyone anymore. She just murders them.
Mm-hmm.
And her
Deep
combined with
strike.
Vol is also interesting because on 6s to hit, her attacks turn into mortal wounds. So you can just straight up use the Morven Vol buff on Celestine and then take all your hits that aren't 6s and re-roll them to try and fish for more 6s. And if you get lucky, she'll just pick a unit up off the board before they even get a save.
Not to mention the fact that she now has innate deep strike and a 6-inch heroic intervention to make a giant
Yeah.
no-go here
So-
zone.
Celestine is gross compared with the next unit, which are the Sacrosants. They have the bodyguard rule, and there are 10 of them in this list. They have 2 up armor, 4 up invul, and then they have strength 6, AP 3 damage, 1 attacks. Their whole purpose, though, is if they're within 3 inches of a character, that character cannot be shot, period. So Celestine has 2 little attendants that run around with her. So you can space them out in a 2-inch Congo line as long as one of them's within 3 inches of the Sacrosant unit that's out of line of sight. And your character can 6-inch heroic intervene on anything that goes near them. So you can pretty much hold an objective and be immune to shooting with this combo. It's very, very strong and worth mentioning. So next, we've got the Dogmata in this list, and Jack Harpster put the extra warlord trait on her, because Vol has to be your warlord of terrible knowledge, which is the Ebon Chalice warlord trait, which is really good. It gives you an auto 6 for your first miracle dice, and you regen CP when you use them on a 5+.
They also took the must-have relic, the Sigil Ecclesiasticus, for the extra hymn of battle, both to knowledge and cast.
Yes.
Though I do wonder, and I don't know if you can put some insight on this, because they took Litany of Enduring Faith, which is the classic +1 to your Shield of Faith invul save, but they also took Verse of Holy Piety for an additional sacred rite. Do you know why they took that?
Because Retributors with Heavy Flamers are pretty cool when 6s to wound are a bonus AP.
I would agree, though I would wonder if he wouldn't already be taking that as his tech for Ebon Chalice in general. The Passion on
in which
one
case,
and then Divine.
putting something on the Sacrosants that they don't already have would be pretty cool.
+1 advance
Or
and charge.
putting the Bolter Litany, or not the Bolter Litany, but the Deny Psychic Powers one if you're versus Psychers. It's just a really technical choice of, I have another tool in my toolbox. What do I need right now?
Yeah, I suppose the options are nice. I could always wonder if perhaps the Catechism of Repugnance for the Bolter one would be better.
That would have been the one I take.
Yeah.
But
I kind of actually was considering doing the Refrain of Blazing Piety for the D3 Mortal Wound one, just simply because
the extra smite again.
The extra smite again to go with the Inquisitor.
But you can also use it in any phase with the strat, as long as you haven't done any other litanies.
That was the other thought I had, yeah.
If you weren't taking the Psyker already, I think it's a valid choice to take the Blazing Piety on a caster, so that out of phase, or maybe in addition to, you can do it at the end of the movement phase, for example. So during the movement phase, you did mortal wounds. During the psychic phase, you did wounds. During the shooting phase, you did wounds. In the combat phase, you did wounds. So you're spacing the wounds out so those models that can only take so much damage per phase still go down in one turn.
It literally states any phase, too. If you wanted to blast someone with this in the morale phase, by God, go to town.
Why not?
Pretty fun. Anyway, fast tech.
And to your point, Bricky, the Dogmata gives obsec to a unit within 6 inches of them during your command phase. So that's important to note. It's at the beginning of your command phase that it goes on. So if you want to hold an objective, the Dogmata has to be in range of the unit at the start of your turn to hold it, because that's when the objectives are scored. But to deny an enemy unit an objective using obsec doesn't matter, because you're going to use it at the start of your turn. The unit will then move on the objective and obsec it away.
Wait, I'm sorry. Do you score at the end of your command phase? You score at the beginning, correct?
Yeah, it wears off, and then you reapply it. So when you go to score the objective, it's worn off, and then the Dogmata applies it again.
Okay, I was wondering if perhaps you would not have an objective, and then when it's your turn for the command phase, you would give them obsec and then take it. Would you then get the points? Or
Correct.
Post?
You would.
You would.
So the Dogmata has to be in range to keep the objective, but the Dogmata does not have to be in range to deny the objective.
How interesting. So if somebody is tempted to deny you of an objective with an obsec unit, you could, and you happen to have the Dogmata there, you could slap it on there in your command phase and therefore gain the primary points of that turn.
As long as you had more.
Yeah, as long as you had more, yeah.
That is surprisingly, I did not know that. I didn't know about the scoring sequencing.
Yep, keep that in mind.
I could have used that.
Then we come to the really cool parts of Ebon Chalice. So everything else is, if you understand the command phase, you can use all these buffs. It's really technical compared to the 8th edition Codex. We get into the bread and butter of the list, which are 2 squads of Dominions with Stormbolters and 2 squads of Rets with Flamers and Cherubs. So the Dominions
and 2 Rhinos, which should be important.
The Rhinos, thank you, Bricky, all can start together and pregame move 6 inches and then disembark and attack if they feel like it. And for 2 CP, you can make all the flamers in one unit hit the maximum number of times.
Which does,
So
I stated for the phase, includes the cherubs that they would reload with.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you can get, in this case, because he's got 4 heavy flamers and a hand flamer, 42 flamer hits on a unit. And the Sisters flamers are all +1 strength versus their other Imperial counterparts. You have strength 4 hand flamers and you have strength 6 heavy flamers. So especially if that unit didn't start in a Rhino, like say the Bloody Rose Retributors with Meltas, these Retributor units can put out a ridiculous amount of pain if Vol is giving them full rerolls. So this is not a list where you want to be on Planet Bowling Ball and go second, because it will just destroy all your critical units turn 1.
Which is
because
very
of the scout
fun.
moves and Vols. But on top of that, he's also got 2 squads of 5 Seraphim, and the Seraphim, they can also use the 1 CP Ebon Chalice ability because they have hand flamers for mortal wounds, and they can come in from reserve and do it. And then their strat is, in the end of the movement phase, 1 of them per turn can shoot out of sequence with their hand flamers. So they're really great at coming in and shooting twice for it, on average 28 flamer hits at strength 4 from reserve, which is pretty great.
So a slight caveat to that is that the Ebon Chalice stratagem is specifically stated in the shooting phase, so you can't double
Correct.
up on it. But still, I mean, it's
I'm
2 things.
I like that Games Workshop has made the rules more clean, so you can't abuse them out of sequence like that, because it would be really, really too good with Seraphim if you could do it in the movement phase. And then Dominions also have their own mortal wound strat with the bolters.
Oh god.
So Storm Bolters
The
for a
blessed
CP
bolt.
can do up to 6 mortal wounds in the
Jeez.
shooting phase. If you roll a 6 to wound with a Storm Bolter, it doesn't do its normal damage. Instead, it converts to mortals up to 6 wounds per unit that does it.
Actually,
so-
it's actually a 6 to hit, and then the attack.
Oh, even
sequence
better.
ends. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how much mortal wounds can this list like actually produce?
A lot.
Like-
It's a little CP heavy, but a lot. If
Yeah,
I'm
if
not
you have
mistaken,
the CP, you can just start taking shit down real fast. Like Morty's actually going to worry about getting cut in half, and based on the number of mortals in this list.
because you in like, let's say in turn 1, if you have the range and all that, the Inquisitor puts out 2d3 mortals between smite and castigation if
Yeah.
need be.
Yeah.
Then you combine that with 6 mortals from the Stormbolters, and then 3 mortals from the Flamers. And then if we decide this list didn't have it, if we wanted to, like me and Brandon mentioned that we liked the Refrain of Blazing Piety, the hymn, that's another D3 mortals. And then it's just at that point, he didn't take any Blessings of the Faithful. Oh, well, he doesn't have a Canoness or anything.
No.
No Canoness.
And then, after that point, Morven can do mortals in the melee phase. Celestine can do mortals in melee. It's actually
It's a lot of mortal
surprisingly
wounds.
lot amount of. That's the one big thing I've noticed in this new codex is that your opportunities for mortal wounds is significantly higher than it used to be.
And that's going to be good
On
against
top of
like
that-
almost anything, especially against like things like Admech, things like
Admech.
Jakari, like especially Admech, especially with like, the Lucius like 2-up whatever.
That's Death Guard.
Yeah, Death Guard. It's going to be really great against that. So they definitely have an answer for these big bads, like with Admech and everything. And then it's really interesting that it like they're using the Dogmata as a way to just keep OPSEC, but like they, even though they only have like 1 troop selection, they're using the Dogmata in order to like kind of trade. Like this entire list feels like that you're just like kind of trading stuff most of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
It feels
And whatever unit you happen to have left, it's OBSEC as long as the Dogmata is next to it.
Yeah.
It feels rather interesting because if you take a look at this list, it has obviously got a really front-heavy load with the double Dominion Rhino Retributor combo, but it also feels like this never-ending like battering. You're going to get hit really hard with all these mortals, Stormbolters, Heavy Flamers, and then once that's done and the enemy recovers a little bit, then the Repentia have arrived and more Seraphim have arrived.
Yeah.
And then Celestine's coming in and causing problems. Then if you survive that, then you got even more. The Sacristans are here. Like, it's just this never-ending bombardment.
How many models are in this list?
Actually, quite a few.
It's actually, let's see, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. See, it's about 70 models.
70 models. Wow.
It's a lot. This is very heavy into the infantry, and it's not even that abnormal.
And sisters
Yeah.
aren't a horde.
No, not supposed to be. Not supposed to be a horde.
Yeah.
Well, they
my
are
120
ordinary
guardsmen.
humans, so their stat line is pretty basic, which allows them to be fairly cheap.
So
but
that's why
then
you
their
can just stuff
heroes
so
show
much.
up, and their heroes are just gods.
Bonkers.
Yeah,
Like a new
Morven
Celestine.
New Celestine is terrifying. Morven Vol is pretty
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Morven Vol's warlord trait is in melee she will reroll everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she has a once per game fight twice,
Oh, it's so good.
and she halves damage to herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty scary.
It's a scary model.
This is actually a horrifying list. I wish I had enough heavy flamers to do it myself, but
to actually do it.
alas.
But I know that, Brandon, you were looking at this list and you were saying that you already know ways that you would tweak it for yourself. And what are the ways that you would tweak it and why?
One of the things we're going to get into, I guess I can get into it now, is scoring secondaries. So when you're looking at the sisters secondaries specifically, I think the shadow operations and battlefield supremacy, the core rulebook already has pretty solid objectives in those categories when it comes to be in parts of the board and perform actions.
Yeah.
But purge the enemy tends to be really difficult.
Mhm.
And no mercy, no respite, same category. Your opponent's not necessarily going to give you anything to do in those categories. And the no mercy, no respite for sisters is perform tons of miracles.
Oh,
And
I
unless
know.
you're Sacred Rose
yeah.
or Order of a Martyred Lady, pretty much no, you're not going to be doing it because it's not going to give you enough points.
Oh,
But
we'll
the
talk
purge
about
the
Sacred Rose soon.
Enemy, the purge the enemy for sisters is destroy units with bolters, flamers, and meltas.
Can
So-
you explain that one? I'm sorry, because that sounds like
So
ridiculous.
that
what
is basically in your shooting phase, you gain 1 point if you kill an enemy with a bolter, flamer, or melta. And then, so if you kill one with a bolter, or like if you kill like 5 with bolters, you still only get the 1 point.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you want to tech into the multiple kinds of weaponry. So if you happen to kill a unit with a bolter, a unit with a flamer, and a unit with a melta, you will get 3 points. And then actually, I think you get an additional if you do all 3.
You get a bonus point
Oh,
if you do
okay.
all 3.
Okay.
And there's no maximum to it. So generally you're trying to go for 2 and then get a turn or 2 where you get 3, which is then 4 points. So you get pretty close to 12 to 15 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
Pretty
looks-
reliably.
The
Just
only,
for
Especially with
killing
this
enemy
list.
units.
Yeah, yeah.
the only issue is that there's nothing entirely based into killing stuff with melee. But at that point, I mean, this list, with the exception of the fact that they're a little low on meltas, you're going to be scoring points probably pretty reliably.
Mm-hmm.
Also realize that this list lost to knights.
Did it really?
Yes, that was the list it lost to, was a double Knight Megara list.
And it happens to be low on meltas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my suggestion is to take the 2x5 rets with 4 heavy flamers and make those squads 3 heavy flamers, 1 multi-melta.
Just a little
And
bit of extra
because
tech.
they still have the cherubs, unless you're at the
double
LSO,
shoot
which
it.
is ruled that you can only use 1 cherub for shooting phase, which I
That's
vehemently disagree with.
agreed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's their tournament; they can run whatever they'd like. When you have 1 multi-melta and you can use 2 cherubs, that means if you are facing the double Knight Majera list, you can shoot out 6 multi-meltas, and because you already have the flamers in the army or on the unit, and you keep a bolter equivalent on the superior, you can unlock Holy Trinity. So you can still buff the meltas to have +1 to wound, and the flamers with +1 to wound. And oh shoot, did you have the vol buff as well? You're going to kill whatever you're shooting. So just that tiny tweak to add a melta to those ret units, I think makes a difference.
In case those listening don't know, the Holy Trinity stratagem is 1 CP. If you fire at a unit, and the unit you have contains a bolter, a melta, and a flamer, and they all attack 1 unit, you gain +1 to wound.
Yeah. Was that the same way that it was in 8th?
It's the same.
It's the same?
Yeah. It's a very good one, and I like it a lot because not only is it fluffy, but you are forced to tech into it in order to gain it.
Yeah.
But particularly with Retributors, often if you are running like a quad multi-melta, they'll put on a combi flamer on the superior because that's bolter flamer. You have the melta.
So you're still getting it.
You're still getting it.
Yeah,
You're
you're
wounding.
And
+1.
the combi flamer is a bolter and a flamer.
Yes, and you're wounding T7 on 2s.
Yeah.
With your
Although
meltas.
rules as
Disgusting.
written, because the combi flamer is a flamer weapon, people are saying that if you had 4 meltas and a combi flamer at 24 inches, you can use Holy Trinity.
Huh. I don't like that, but I get that's the raw type idea.
That's the raw.
Yes, and raw
It's
is
raw.
terrible. If you're doing that to your opponent, I want to slap you, so don't do it. But I'm hoping there's an FAQ for that when the next FAQ comes out that says, the flamer profile has to be in range,
Mm-hmm.
not just the weapon.
Not just the weapon. Yeah,
Agree.
that would be kind of gross. So is that the only thing that you would change? Was just one Melta?
I
I
dropped
also
the
want
Inquisitor.
an extra unit of Zephyrim because I feel like flinging 5 Zephyrim that murder almost everything in the game with a Vol buff in 2 turns is way better than doing it once. But I also respect the commitment to the Repentia because he's purchased the Repentia Superior, and moving things around to find the points for the extra unit of Zephyrim might not work.
Okay.
That's
All right.
fair.
But otherwise, I would have no problem just taking this list out of the box and playing it. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Bricky?
I dropped the Inquisitor personally. I would tech into the refrain of Blazing Piety as instead for my out of sequence damage in case I have to deal with like a Catan or something. And I'd take the Inquisitor out. I think I'd go with him. I would either take an additional squad of Zephyrim, or I would just increase the size of the squad and most likely take Pendant for reroll charges. I really like the idea of the multi-meltas on the Retributors personally. You know me, I don't tend to play lists like this that are really like, I don't want to say lopsided, but they're very teching into this very specific idea. I kind of like my jack of all trades lists. But
Well, this list kind of feels like a jack of all trades list.
It
kind of does everything.
It does, but I like, in my list, I would run some Penitent Engines, and then maybe I'd take some different character support, 20-woman sister squad, maybe a squad of Arcoflagellants.
You're saying that this list looks a little bit too spammy for you? Is that
a
what it
little
is?
too spammy, yeah. But that's a personal thing. It doesn't
Yeah.
change the effectiveness of the list whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, like in a competitive sense, you want to spam the most efficient
Yes.
units that you possibly have, right? So
And he is
it makes
definitely
sense.
doing that.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the list of Meki and Jumpy?
I'm trying to figure out how to beat it right now, especially with Death Guard, because I mean there's a lot of Mortal Wound output, and I know Death Guard wise, a lot of people are not bringing Morty as much. They're bringing way more Death Shroud Terminators.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know a solution for Death Shroud. It's called Mortal Wounds.
Yeah,
yeah, Mortal Wounds will do it. But I mean, even if you didn't get the Mortal Wounds off, right?
Mhm.
You're still having, like, how do you get do you get any additional minus AP?
Divine Guidance would be extra AP on 6s in the shooting phase on wounds.
Is it 1 or is it
Just
2
plus,
of 4?
It's +1.
Okay, because like a Death Shroud Terminator has a 2-up armor save and then a 4-up invul. So
Right. So that thing of heavy flamers would take our strength 6 -1 flamers into strength 6 -2 on 6s to wound.
right.
Which with 40 something shots would be pretty painful against the Death Shroud.
Yeah.
It should knock out the squad.
It'd be something like if you have the Vol buff, pretty much 32 wounds, of which maybe 6 of them are AP2 and the rest are AP1, plus 3 mortals.
I was about to say,
You
plus
throw
just
that in there.
one dead Death Shroud
Yeah.
because 1 CP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mortals don't take effect until all damage is dealt.
And then not to mention that Blessed Bolts does 6 mortals, so that's 2 more dead Death Shroud.
Mhm.
Vol's weapon is flat 3 damage.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then
sorry, Death
Celestine.
Guard. Forgot about Death Guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Celestine's mortals. Point being, it's going to hurt, really.
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, it's gonna hurt. I mean, but like that's kind of how I'm analyzing the list right now. I mean, because like personally, if I was going to take Death Guard in seeing a list like this and preparing for like a sisters match, I would probably bring some Blight. I would bring Blight Lord Terminators with also Death Shroud Terminators, and then 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, and then hope that my Blight Lords can shoot the sisters off.
Yeah, but that's against this specific list.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. But I'm just saying in general, because like that could also fit a all comers list, because that's how I'm kind of figuring
Yeah,
out how to
they're
deal
still
with
T3,
Drukari
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, they're still T3 and
So.
stuff, so it have the same profile as
Yeah.
Drukari and Admech.
What about you, John?
What do you think, Jumpy?
Dude, I'm just very impressed with the Zephyrim squad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
85 points for these things? Wow.
Well,
They get-
85 for the ability to delete 20 super buff Death Star Admech infantry. Yes, please.
Exactly. Yeah, like they get 3 attacks, 4 if they're in Bloody Rose, strength 4, -4 AP, 1 damage. That's wow.
You know, back in
12-inch move also.
Yeah.
back in the day, or in the prior codex, they actually naturally re-rolled all wounds, but they only had 2 attacks, and so they removed that. I gave them an attack, and then lowered them by I think like 2 points.
Yeah. Are the Zephyrims are the ones that drop down, right? Those are
The flying ones.
The flying ones.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like towards the end of like 8th edition, weren't people bringing more of Zephyrims anyways?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they were just like so cost efficient. And,
They
like,
were
yeah.
really good against Death Guard too, because -3 AP, only 1 damage, but reroll all wounds.
Yeah.
Pretty good at chew through Death Guard.
Yeah, as long as you don't run into Mortarian's Anvil.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at that point it was we're gonna use 36-inch range multi-melta, and your aura reroll don't mean shit.
Well, it's because the thing is now is that we also have the ability to like place our contagions onto objectives. So now, like, if my warlord that has Mortarian's Anvil is on it or near it, I can put it on the objective and it just sits there.
That's also true.
Yeah. So we kind of dissected this list, and I think that's a good intro into going into like how are the different ways that. Oh, sorry, Brandon. Did you want to say something?
I want to do some honorable mentions of unit combos that people are sort of looking at but didn't make it into this list.
Yeah.
So one of them is Penitent Engines and Mortifiers.
Yes.
Those units are actually really good.
Yep.
They don't need
Yes.
buffs, and with heavy bolters, they shoot reasonably well.
Yep.
And both actually melee really well too, although nowadays people want to bring the saws instead of the flails because the saws are an interesting tech choice. But regardless, they're reasonably costed for their firepower. They can actually take a single Dark Lance without dying because they have 5 wounds and 5 up Feel No Pain. So they're actually annoying to get rid of with las cannons and Dark Lances.
Yeah. And they only give you like 1 point to bring it down. So it's just,
I brought a big fat squad of 4 of them to the tournament.
yeah.
Another honorable mention is Paragon Warsuits. I don't think they're hyper competitive, but I think that in the right list, an outflanking unit of Paragons or a unit of Paragons with heavy bolters and righteous repugnance and storm bolters plus a vol buff could actually be kind of silly if your opponent can't actually kill them. So they're kind of if your opponent can't kill them turn 1, start them on the board. If your opponent can, bring them in turn 2 or 3 on a flank, and they are a bully unit, because if you don't have las cannons, they will slaughter you because they're 2 up armor, damage reduction 1. So if you're shooting them with plasma guns, they're just going to tank them.
Yeah, they don't care.
If you're shooting them bolters, they're just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
Remind me.
And when they come in, you can miracle dice their charge, so they can shoot and charge. So yeah, they're reasonable. And then 20 strong Battle Sister squads, honorable mention, because I don't think they're the most competitive unit for the same reason as the Paragons, in that if you start them on the board against the wrong army, you will lose all of them. I am looking at you, Admech, and they're pretty hard to hide because there's so many of them. But if you have a lot of CP in your list and can afford to spend the 2 CP for them to rapid fire their bolt weapons at 24 inches for 2 CP and have transhuman while on an objective, and you're giving them vol buffs anyway, and then you're giving them the 1 CP my storm bolters do mortals, that can be a really annoying unit to deal with.
Yeah. Is Vol like just like the linchpin unit as of right now when it comes
Vol
to
is
sisters?
really good.
Yeah.
You can make a list without her, but I think making a list without either Vol or Celestine, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, is that so? I think I like disagree. Real quick though, you mentioned righteous repugnance. Remind me what that does, because isn't that the buff for the hymn?
It's a war hymn that you have to take a dogmata or the what's the lady with the books?
The dialogus.
Dialogus. No one ever takes the Dialogus because the dogmata is the new hotness. But those are the only 2 characters that have access to that litany, and it's a litany of bolters within half range or +1 AP, and 6s to hit with bolters automatically wound.
That's actually called the Catechism of Repugnance.
That's
sorry. I think the righteous one is the one where the priest gets like fight again and then gets buffed up in melee or something.
Yeah, I use the wrong repugnance and I keep confusing them. So the Catechism of Repugnance is what I'd put on the Paragons to make their bolters ridiculous.
Yes.
Most of the stuff that you guys talk about with sisters sounds like Mad Libs. Like
Yeah.
it's just
That's why I did well in that tournament, because no one knew what the hell I was doing.
Yeah. So we talked about this. We talked about this list. So with this list, is this like what type of play styles are we looking at when it comes to sisters? Like when we're talking to people that are just starting out on sisters, during like COVID, and they just started playing sisters or anything like that. What can they expect to play as when when they're playing sisters? Like, what are the different play styles?
I think this is a great question for Bricky.
Well, so that was an interesting concept because originally back in the old 8th edition, Bloody Rose was the thing. It was Bloody Rose everything.
Yeah.
And nowadays, it seems like the internal codex like balance is so much better realized that the options are there. For instance, this list right here has a pretty devastating alpha strike.
Yeah.
Right. The rhinos, the flamers, all that kind of stuff. Though I'm noticing that nowadays, sisters naturally, as Brandon mentioned, their tankiness is not huge. So you do need to do a little bit of hiding for most of your major units. But it feels more like, unlike in 8th edition, back when it was just get all your Repentia up there, kill everything, use all your multi-meltas. It feels more like a battering ram, where you send in this constant waves to wear down your opponent. The rhinos with dominions come in there, tons of damage, you really weaken them. Your opponent attempts to recover. Now your Seraphim or Zephyrim and Celestine are coming from the sky in deep strike, and then they're attacking. Your Repentia have made it close enough to hit. They try to recover from that as well. And then some of your big hitters, like your Morven Vol, who's finally got up to melee range, all that stuff is really starting to constantly, it's just battering you turn after turn after turn. And it's, can you either, one, have the stuff to deal with that, or the tankiness to, or two, can you attempt to batter them back, meet them head on?
Well, I feel like that not a lot of armies have enough to tank, like, the amount of mortal wounds that these guys are putting out, as well as the flamers that they're putting out. And then to spice it up, even like, you got your characters and then also your multi-meltas. It feels like I guess not talking about this list, it feels like that Sisters for the 9th edition Codex literally has everything that they need in order to survive in a 9th edition world.
Yes, obviously, as he mentioned, Drukari and Admech, especially Admech, and definitely if you have bad terrain, that's kind of the Sisters' main weakness, is they are T3 1 wound.
Yeah.
And so do you have the ability to survive the mortal wounds and the battering of damage? Maybe not, but you can absolutely punch me back because I'm not very tanky.
Yeah.
So if you can get me first, or if you can get enough of me before I can get you, though it feels a lot less bad, because, when you look at Drukari, you have the same idea where it's get me first, get the raiders, break the transports, but it's so darn difficult to do it. Whereas this one, I don't have 9 raiders hiding behind 1 L.
Yeah.
I have to spread out to a certain degree.
Yeah.
It feels more interactive.
You're not going to be able to hide everything, more than likely. So you're going to set up on the board with the intention of, I might lose this, right?
I mean, obviously, I'll hide as much as I possibly can.
Right.
But when I had my list, I took the 20 sisters, and for most of the time, sometimes they got shot, sometimes they didn't. On the final game I played, I faced double Volkite Contemptor and double Redemptor Dread, and I got second turn, couldn't hide them all. The entire squad died turn 1.
Yep.
And that's a risk I had to take because I brought 20 woman squad sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But y'all have your Hospitaller can also raise the dead, right?
Only if the squad's still alive.
Yeah.
And only D3 of them.
Yeah.
Only D3 revived models, we say in quotes.
Only D3.
Yeah.
John P, you mainly do Space Wolves. Obviously, you're playing a lot of AdMech now, but with Space Wolves, how do you think you deal with something? I mean, maybe not specifically this list, but we fought a few times with Sisters and stuff. How do you think you deal with some of the new stuff coming in?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty brutal. There's a lot of there's a lot of shots against a list that I would bring for Space Wolves. I'm currently running something like a Chapter Master, 2 Dreadnoughts. I guess if I get turn 1, maybe against I would have a similar turn 1 against you did in your tournament, where maybe I could focus fire my Dreadnoughts and kill Alpha unit. But I think if you don't bring a list that doesn't play the objective super well, you just get wiped off the board. Yeah, personally,
that's a good summary.
Yeah.
Yep. And yet it is still not as strong as Admech or Drukari.
I don't think it's as strong, but I think that it has enough to play with them.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think you have a chance.
Yeah. It's not like
it's not completely outclassed.
Exactly. It feels balanced enough to where it feels balanced enough in the sense that if you were to go up against Drukhari, like you guys said, like, you know, you guys have a chance to fight them, but it also doesn't feel like they're locked into one specific play style, right?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that would be my summary is when you look at the game mechanics where you see things like Holy Trinity
Mm-hmm.
or the Purge the Enemy with the Holy Trinity or Miracle Dice generation, all of them reward you for having different units working together with different roles. So sisters are close ranged pretty much across the board, unless you're counting the Castigator, which I'm very sad is
Yeah.
not viable, unfortunately, in my estimation.
No, you're right. It's
but
it's pretty bad.
you still have a good combination of melee and shooting threats, and you're kind of this hybrid army where you say, what is my opponent bringing? Okay, I'm going to try and outshoot this opponent because they're bringing Death Shroud, Terminators, and Zombies. I can't out melee them.
Yeah.
I'll have to outshoot them. Or then you play a Tau gun line, and you're like, well, I definitely can't outshoot the Tau, but I can outpunch them. So I'm going to play a melee game now.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my summary for sisters is you're trying to build a list that's a hybrid because you're rewarded for doing so, and then you're trying to modify your play style so that you win the objective game somehow, even though your opponent is generally going to be better at you or at shooting or melee.
Yeah, it's a multi-threat list, right? It's multi. You guys have lots of threats that you guys can push into the board because you guys have very, very low costing units. Even though that, you know, they're T3 or whatever. Does it really matter when you have that many threats and that many bodies on the board? You know what I mean? Like,
And they have
Strength in numbers.
Yeah, and plus most of them have a 3-up save. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, Repentia are made of paper, but yes.
Yeah, like
That's
it's not like
kind of the thing, though, is if your Tauan can overwatch the sisters, they're going to fold.
Yep, it's true. I remember, and I don't even think the edition change really changed this, but I fought Demeki once with Tau, and I charged a Riptide with a full squad of Repentia, and he killed the whole squad.
Oh.
And there was, I don't think anything's changed where that isn't the case anymore. That would still happen.
Now, what secondaries? You know, every 9th edition Codex has come out with secondaries. Are the sisters secondaries any good at all?
I think
The sisters secondaries are pretty
good.
balanced in my
Yeah.
estimation.
they don't
Okay.
feel like there's no oaths of moment in there where it's just an auto take, but everything is either decent into a matchup or can be teched into via list building. I'd say. Would you agree?
I would, and they're the way I would design secondaries. Like, I don't know. The way Drukhari and Admech are right now, they're seemingly out of control at this moment in time. The Sisters Codex feels like what a 9th edition Codex should be, where the Sisters specific secondaries, you could just totally skip them and play the book ones and be totally fine. But if you're going to play the Sisters ones correctly, you really need to tweak your list before you bring them to the table. Because if you get to the table and then wonder, oh yeah, what are my secondaries? You're not going to be able to score them efficiently. And I feel like that's how they should be designed for the Codex specific ones, is they're rewarding you for a play style that matches what the army is supposed to do without being oppressive.
Yeah, it's not like just running herd. What is it? Herd the prey or whatever for Drukhari.
Or the prey.
Because you can. Like,
Take
it
them
doesn't
alive.
matter.
Give them
Yeah.
a lot. Oaths of moment.
Yeah.
I find that the two of them, the Miracle Dice Generation and the Purge the Enemy one, Bolters, Meltas, that one, those are two ones you can do excellently by teching your list into. And the other two secondaries are really good depending on map. One of them is how many objectives are out of your deployment zone, and the other one is how many objectives are on the board in general.
Yeah, but they're not easy because Sacred Ground's the one outside of your deployment zone. You have to perform an action on an objective outside of your zone and still survive until your command phase.
Yes, that one's tough, but you do gain a pretty whopping 4 points for it, which is quite nice. There's like
I
a
feel like
couple
that's
ones-
one where
yeah.
you hope to go second because if you do all the actions on the last turn, they auto complete and then you score.
High risk, high reward.
That's
that's a good
one of those
point.
ones where I feel like it'd be good on those maps where the objectives are outside of the deployment zone but kind of close to you, like, you know, the vertical.
Oh, yeah.
Vertical
Like
vital
overrun?
intelligence or overrun.
Yes,
Mhm.
big agree.
Now, I think that John P, you had a question or like before we did the podcast that you wanted to ask about sisters.
Oh, I was wondering about custom orders. You guys think they're gonna be any good?
Skippable.
No, yeah, not really. There's like one trait in there that's good, but ironically, the stratagems for every other thing and the warlord traits and reluxers, they're so good. They're really good.
It's hard to miss out on Ebon Chalice. I do 3 mortals for a CP. Bloody Rose.
Yeah.
I murder everything in melee.
Or my Sacred Rose one, which was surprisingly decent. I want
Or
to talk.
Valorous Heart. I have a Canoness who is unkillable.
Yeah.
That's a great build. I
What,
really,
what were you saying?
I was going to say I want to talk a little bit about the Sacred Rose thing that we mentioned earlier in terms of teching into different stuff, because that was a build that I took to the tournament, and I did not think it would do as well as it did. I know.
What does it give you?
Sacred Rose?
Yeah.
Every time you spend a miracle dice on you have on a 4-up, 50% chance that you just regen a new one.
Oh, a new miracle dice,
Mhm.
and then you just roll for it again.
It doubles the number of miracle dice you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also
That's the-
you ignore combat attrition, so only one model can flee from morale.
Oh, okay. So you would roll for your miracle dice, and then if it's a 4-up, then you get.
So you would
to roll it again.
So you would spend a miracle dice, and then after you finish spending it, roll a 4-up. If you get one, you then roll
then you just get a new one.
a free miracle dice.
Okay. All right. It's just a free miracle dice. That's good. Yeah.
So actually, I don't know if you had any other questions you want to go through before or should I just talk about my
Yeah,
thing?
I have a couple more here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, actually, you can go for it. Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited about this because it was really fun.
Yeah.
So naturally, the Sisters orders are way better balanced now. It's not Bloody Rose, Valorous Heart, and no one cares. Now it's Bloody Rose, Argent Shroud,
Bloody Rose, everything else.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Still
the
Bloody
only
Rose is
major
still good.
order that people aren't looking at is Martyred Lady.
Which might change with this new book.
Hopefully.
But regardless, Sacred Rose was, personally, you might think Marred Lady. I thought it was Sacred Rose was probably the worst. Then I changed my mind. It might be better than Marred Lady, but now there's a book, so we'll see. But the Sacred Rose ability, like I mentioned before, is the regening of Miracle Dice. The secondary objective that you can take for, I believe it's No Mercy, No Respite, is if you spend 2 Miracle Dice, you do 2 Acts of Faith in your turn, you get a point. If you do 3, you get 2 points. However, if you do it during your enemy's turn, you spend 2 Miracle Dice, you get 2 points. And if you do 3, you get 3 points. Now this maxes to
And it's
12
per turn, not
Yes.
battle round.
per turn. And this maxes to 12, so you can't full max it out. But naturally, with the lower amount of Miracle Dice you gain, it's a little harder to earn, which
Unless
is
you're
why
Sacred Rose.
unless you're Sacred Rose.
Yeah.
So what I brought was actually a Canoness with the Sacred Rose's Relic, which is the Light of Agathena, which is a Brazier of Holy Fire that has an unlimited use, and a Beacon of Faith. So a Brazier of Holy Fire is a 12-inch range assault weapon, D6 shots, and every 4-up you roll is an automatic mortal wound, and the attack sequence ends.
Yeah, it's a flamer that auto mortals on 4-ups.
Okay.
And so I also took a new Warlord trait called Beacon of Faith, which originally just gave you a Miracle Dice extra every battle round. Now it's only for the unit that has it, but they can use it in addition in the phase. So I roll a 4-up on a Miracle Dice or anything of that nature for that Canoness, and then I walk up, fire my unlimited flame mortal thing, can use that 4-up if I wanted to for the mortals, and then even though that dice was only for that model, it's still a Sacred Rose model. So I still get my on a 4-up, I gain a new Miracle Dice.
Yeah.
And then I took Catherine, St. Catherine, or the Triumph of, who gives you a new Miracle Dice every single battle round. And if she uses the Miracle Dice, you can't roll for it, but I can still use it on somebody else. And the Triumph of St. Catherine has a new ability where you can turn, let's say in 6 inches, I'm using a multi-melta unit next to the Catherine. I can use a Miracle Dice and auto make it into a 6. And since they're the ones using it, not Catherine, I still get my 4-up reroll for an extra dice. And that auto turning it into a 6, I actually found extremely helpful because I was doing it on my multi-melta Retributors, and Sacred Rose has a stratagem for 1 CP to do exploding 6s in shooting with anything. That includes multi-meltas. So I was using the 6 in the multi-meltas to hit, getting the hit, getting an additional hit, or if I needed it, I was rolling all my Stormbolter shots for Blessed Bolts, and then if I didn't get enough 6s, bada bing, free 6 from Catherine, auto 2 mortal wounds on that one.
Yep. Spend
And
a miracle
so-
die, do 2 mortals.
And
Pretty
so
nice.
it was just this constant
But
stream
it's
of miracle
snowballing
dice.
because you start out with a handful of dice, and as the game goes on, you just start generating more and more and more and more. It's pretty much the Jack Harpster list was, I can't believe how many mortal wounds there are, and this list is everything is miraculous.
Yep, and
And
it was
also you get 12 free secondary points every game.
that was the main
I think,
thing.
I think that's the breaking point right there. Is
Yep.
that it's 12 points that you can get where your opponent can't interact at all.
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
no mercy, no respite, which is a generally not
Not
taken.
good. Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And so almost every game it was 12 free points there,
Uh huh.
12 free points from scramblers,
Uh huh.
and then something else, engage, whatever
Yeah.
I needed.
So you would get like, so you couldn't possibly get like 100, but you would get what is it,
Yeah.
90, 90,
96.
96.
Isn't that really
Yep.
cool game design though? Because those sisters are straight up worse. Like
Mhm.
they don't have the cool abilities that Bloody Rose or Argent Shroud or Ebon Chalice have, but they just score points really well. So they don't remove
Yeah.
your enemy's models really well. They don't control the board really well compared to the other orders, but they just score points.
And my list was not particularly wonderful. I brought an exorcist because I wanted to, because I liked my paint job,
Yeah.
and I brought Celestian squads because I didn't have Sacrosands.
Oh
Like,
no.
If I dumped the exorcist, brought some Sacrosands, I had a big brick of 4 penitent engines, which legitimately won me 2 games.
Mhm.
Yeah,
With,
penitents are really good
They're
if you have
really
the
good.
models take them.
Yeah. Yeah.
and they also can gain the maxed out flamers. It was very
Like
it was surprised. I was incredibly surprised to take what is argued as one of the worst sister orders and legitimately do as well as I did. It was
they're not bad.
very
You
exciting.
can totally
Yeah.
bring Sacred
Yeah.
Rose now. They're good.
It was well, I mean, it's not as good as the rest, I'd say, in terms of like
But it's more
the order.
tactical. It's
It
tactical.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a game of points,
yes.
gives
Yeah,
you
if you
points.
can get points without like interacting with anybody, then like what?
Yeah.
That's just free secondary points, and all
Yeah,
you have
you're,
to worry
you're
about is just
putting
primaries.
pressure on your
Easy.
opponent because they have to be more
Yeah.
aggressive to keep up.
Yeah, that's literally how Tyranids play. Like it's just, it's just see, I'm not gonna win, or like I'm not going to probably kill as much stuff as you're gonna kill for me, but I'm still gonna get points. It's like it doesn't matter.
Also, they can't deny, like, what are they going to do? Stop my miracle dice regeneration? How are you
Yeah,
going to do that?
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, you can't stop me. You won't stop me.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you? So for somebody that's going up against sisters with either a 9th edition codex or an 8th edition codex, anybody that's going up against sisters, how do you? What's the way that you can destroy like a sister's army if you're playing against them? Like if you're going up against them, like what's the best way to win against them?
So Bricky, you've played games. How'd your games go where you lost?
Pretty great. I lost to a gentleman with 2 Lords of Skulls and a Brass Scorpion by 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
That was high. I have an Exorcist and only 1 squad of multi-melter Retributors. So that was how that went. The other game I lost was against Custodians, and that was a lack. That was also for like a lack of killing power against tankier units. I personally, go ahead.
That's one way to win. Would be remove the bits of the sisters list that counters your army. So if you're playing all big stompy robots,
Mhm.
and you kill all the Retributor squads, which are only this equivalent in toughness of 10 guardsmen.
Yeah.
That's how you can think of them. So if you can get rid of them early, it's like, oh, the rest of the army is T3 models with strength 6 flamers. I'm just going to
Mhm.
stroll over this army now. So that's one way.
Okay.
Any other ways, Bricky, that you lost?
Well, I went 4 and 2, so those are my 2 main losses.
Okay.
However, I would say that in a both good and difficult balancing idea, if the opponent plays sisters very well and hides what they need to, and is very choice with their movement, I find it quite difficult. I would say that utilizing your movement, if you are a faster army, and also, and this is, I think, an issue that a lot of newer players have, is I got turn 1. Everything moves as far as it can forward as I want it to.
Mhm.
Like if you get turn 1 and your
Oh,
opponent has a
Do not
whole
do
lot
that
of
into sisters.
Yeah.
lot of Repentia and a whole lot of Sacrosands chilling there, if you want to move a little bit, okay, but do not get that close.
Yeah, because
Sisters
most of
are
your
a
stuff-
close ranged army, man. Keep
Yeah, it's
them
like
at arm's length.
It's like mid range, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
keep
It's
them at
around mid-range.
arms. Keep them at arms length
Mhm.
until you are ready to deal with them.
Like what's the range on the flamers, on the heavy flamers?
12.
12.
12. Yeah. So as long as you
The longest range weapon we have that isn't on a tank is a 36-inch heavy bolter, and that's the only one.
Mhm.
Everything else is
Oh,
24 inches.
What's
And
your
are-
fastest moving unit?
Would
or
you say
units.
either Zephyr or
Zephyr and
Zephyr.
Zephyr.
Yeah, it's Zephyr.
12?
Okay.
12. And sisters lost advance and charge. Failed to
Mhm.
mention that.
Right.
So their maximum threat range now is 25 inches. because you can take the Sacred Rite of +1 to advance and charge. But
Mhm.
then again, they can't. Yeah, that would be with Repentia advancing 7 inches and then
Yeah.
charging 12, because you can't declare a charge more than 12 inches away.
Yeah.
And then unless you roll box cards from Miracle Dice, that's probably not going to happen.
No, but
Not with that attitude. Kidding. Kidding.
that's just it. You have units that are faster than Sisters now, and the way Sisters get long charges is with Miracle Dice, and if they don't roll the right Miracle Dice, they can't do it, not reliably.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Repentia still have the 3d6 charge.
3d6
Right.
drop the lowest.
Drop the oh yeah, 3d6 drop lowest. Yeah.
And that's only if you take the superior.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say, be very good with your screening, because you're going to get people deep striking flamers in your back. And if you don't put your character there properly, high 0.3 mortal wounds, you've got that. Make sure you screen your characters, because if you see Repentia coming, don't let them get to your big important stuff.
Yeah, especially since you can't Miracle Dice to charge anymore. The deep strikes from like Sisters isn't as scary for the charge, right?
You can Miracle Dice the charge still.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
What's can you Miracle Dice for a 12 or like for a 9?
You can still do
They
it.
can't advance
Man,
and charge. That's
man.
You can't. They can't advance and charge. And since you've lost a lot of Miracle Dice generation, you have a lot less.
harder.
Of it, so it's harder.
So you have to keep track of your
Yes.
opponent's Miracle Dice.
Yeah.
With the exception of the Sacred Rose build, I found myself surprisingly starved for Miracle Dice, where I couldn't just be like 9-inch charge, 9-inch charge.
Even with Sacred Rose?
No, I said with the exception of
Oh,
Sacred Rose.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
No, that was
With
easy.
Sacred Rose, you're just waterfalls of Miracle Dice. Here you go.
Yeah.
Which is
That's-
fun, because that's actually the lore of Sacred Rose. They have the most
It
miracles.
matches. It's wonderful.
I'm very
The Sacred
I'm very
Rose
pleased.
lore is the least strategic Sisters of all. They don't even plan. They just show up and have faith that they're going to win regardless.
It's like
Yep.
orcs if they were sisters.
A
So
little-
hold on,
little
wait,
Pretty much.
did they make any changes to the Miracle Dice? Is it still like where you can pop 2 and turn 1 into a 6?
That's only with the Ebon Chalice order.
Yeah.
That's
Only
with
Ebon
Chalice,
Chalice does
okay.
that.
They made a few changes. The main one is that denying the witch does not give you a Miracle Dice anymore.
Right.
Now that you can auto-deny on an unmodified 6.
Right.
Yeah, you can't auto deny on Miracle Dice anymore, and that was a big one.
Yes,
Because
you
now
can't
they made it
use
so that a 6 to deny always succeeds.
Yeah.
But you can't use Miracle Dice to do it.
Dude,
No more Miracle Dice to deny anymore.
This is why I would
Dude.
probably still take the inexorable.
guys,
for
I'm just
Death Guard.
saying. I'm just
Love
saying,
it.
man. The more that you guys talk about mortal wounds, the more the Black Templars are looking more and more tasty. I'm just saying, man. Like it's just,
I mean, yeah.
yeah,
Well, Death Star 40K, bring on the mortal wounds.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, watch here. Grey Knights and K-Suns are going to come in. Black Templars are going to be like S tier. Just watch. Just watch.
Also, the other thing is that back in the day, you would get a Miracle Dice if you rolled a 1 for a morale test. That's gone as
It's
well.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of felt like crud.
It
If you could-
was fun when you did it.
Yeah. But like for the person that's going up against it, it's like, oh, come on. Not only do you auto pass morale, but now you also get a Miracle Dice. Come on, man. Come on.
Hey, I need a 1.
Oh, here we go. Let me just trade my 1 for something else.
Yeah. John P., do you have any other questions that you want to ask? I have one more question, but
That question.
oh, okay. Demeki, do you have anything?
That question.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so,
I mean, we've talked a lot.
Oh, yeah,
Everything
yeah.
I wanted answered was answered.
Yeah, same.
so when you're talking to new players, what are the tips that you want to give to new Sisters players?
New Sisters players or new players fighting Sisters?
Just new Sisters players. People that picked up Sisters and want to try them out. Like, what are some tips that you can give them?
Brandon.
Don't treat them like a Death Star. Even if you look at a profile like Paragons and it's like, wow, they're so tough. They have damage reduction, 2-up armor. Sisters are not there to take damage.
Mhm.
Try and rely on movement and terrain and reserves to keep your units alive instead of brute force, unless you're building an entire army of Valor's Heart, in which
Yeah.
case you can try. It's just not going to be, I think, the top tier army. Number one. Number two, focus on learning the rules that have to activate in the command phase and trying to practice making sure that when you end your turn, you're already thinking about what your next turn is going to look like so that you get the most bang for your buck with the Dogmata and Morven Vol. And some of the Canoness abilities actually are the exception. I don't think we got into those, but if you are bringing a Canoness and you're giving them the extra pointed abilities, they don't even need to be on the table to activate, which is kind of cool. That's the one exception.
Yeah. What about you, Bricky? Any tips?
I actually didn't know you. I didn't know you didn't need to be on the table to activate. That's interesting. Tips, yes. Definitely learn the movement game, which I believe was what he said. If you're playing Sisters, very often it's either once you show your face, once you arrive, it's a good chance that if you don't kill what you want to kill, it's going to hurt you back really bad. So if you're going to make your effort, if you're going to show your face, make sure when you do it properly. We're not as sneaky as Grey Knights that just put everything behind a wall or a Drukhari list or anything. And your things are going to have to be out there in the open. But in that case, force your opponent to pick. Well, the great thing about Sisters is that you have everything is a terrifying threat. It's all threat prioritization. And so if you have to show something that's going to be hard to kill, like some Valorous Heart Sacrosanct, or force your opponent to pick. Like, okay, that squad, I only have this thing to shoot, and there's a squad of Repentia coming at my face and a squad of Retributors with multi-meltas.
Yeah.
Force them to pick one. Don't make it easy and be like, here's a squad of 5 Battle Sisters that don't do anything, and a squad of Repentia. Like, oh, that's an easy choice.
Man, dude, it must be nice to have multiple threats that you can put into your army
You'll-
for a cheap
you'll
price.
get one soon.
Jeez, man, come on.
Once Nids come out, I'll be horrified.
What about some matchups? Like, what are the matchups that Sisters are good against, and then what are some matchups that they're bad against?
I love fighting Marines. I find them like candy.
You just trade up so easily because
Yeah.
Sisters are glass cannons, and they will slice Marines in half.
This
But
Dominion
Marines
squad.
will definitely kill Sisters. It's just the Sisters are cheaper.
Yeah.
It's just cheaper, and it's the Dominion squad with the Stormbolters.
Yeah.
2 damage.
Yeah. That thing terrifies me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I've got transhuman. Yeah, I've got 6 mortal wounds. Definitely Marines. I struggled. Well, I fought Custodians, and I actually don't think they're that difficult. I think the player was just pretty good. I actually I find myself having a bit of a difficulty against either I find myself having trouble with anything that I haven't teched to fight. Because while you can make a really balanced list,
I mean, like, that makes sense because you
No,
didn't
I know.
against.
Yeah.
I know, but it's like I find that all the things that I'm really good at dealing with are mainly elites and like not quite hordes, but the in between, like Necrons and Admech. I found myself having trouble sometimes when I fought a guy who played guard.
Yeah.
And all the ignore LOS and the sheer volume of las guns just eat through Repentia, like complete cake. And so I find a little bit of difficulty with some hordes. I think they're really good at fighting elites and the middle tier. And if you bring a lot of Meltas, then you're fine against knights.
Yeah.
But I find some hordes to be a little bit problematic.
Here's the thing, Bricky. How do you feel Sisters do into Guard? Because I think Guard are actually very well statted to deal with Sisters.
I felt the same way. Las guns being strength 3, much cheaper, and the large amounts of ignore LOS. Obviously, I think Sisters are significantly better as an army than Guard.
Yes,
But
but
they have
in
the
the
tools.
matchup, I think Guard and Sisters is one of Guard's better matchups.
I think Guard are pretty good against Sisters. I don't think that they're favored.
Well, look at it this way:
but-
like Morven Vol halves damage, right?
Right.
But a unit of 10 Scions with first rank fire, second rank fire, and AP 3 rerolling to wound because she's a monster or a vehicle she's dead.
Yeah, there's the point we made earlier. Screen your characters.
Yeah.
Sacrosanct. Don't let you
Guards-
get shot.
Guard with Scions especially.
Oh, I know.
Sisters
I
are
like-
in trouble, man.
Yeah.
I like my Scions quite a bit.
Well, Scions in general, just like that turn 1 Alpha Strike, is pretty brutal for like most armies to deal with because that's just a lot of firepower that you're bringing onto the table on like turn 1. Yeah.
No one but me brings Scion Valkyries, man. I'm telling you. Everyone brings Deep Strike Scions. No one brings the Valkyrie ones. It's just me. And it's good, I swear to God.
It's pretty neat.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's irritating.
Yeah. that too.
All right. I think that is it for today. We've talked plenty about the Sisters Codex. Yeah, I think we covered a lot. I think that we learned a lot when it came to Sisters.
A+.
Yes, A+.
A+, S- army.
Yeah,
hope
what
this was
would you
helping.
rank it? What would you rank it, Brandon, right now, the Codex?
I would rank it exactly where a 9th edition Codex should be.
A+, S-.
I would call it an A-.
A-.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh.
It's being a little bit modest, a little bit of some modesty.
A- in that there are definitely a few units that miss the mark.
That's
And
very true.
I think that there's a couple units that are probably going to get tweaked, like all of the characters. But overall, they're at the power level a 9th edition Codex should be.
Yeah, it seems like a good codex. It feels like you guys have a lot of tools, and that there's actual things that GW can tweak where it's not going to break the codex and it's not going to make things seem harder.
Agreed.
My God, coming from Guard and my love of tanks, I just look around and I'm like, there's no reason to take anything except a Rhino. Immolators and Castigators, I want to bring them.
Yeah.
They're so, especially immolators. They're so poor.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's do some plugs. Bricky, where can everybody find you at?
You can find me at Bricky, literally everywhere. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. It's literally just all Bricky.
Mm-hmm. And then also Adeptus Ridiculous.
Oh, yes, you can find us at Adeptus Ridiculous, where we do a lore podcast for newcomers of 40K.
Yes.
Explaining all the silliness. We do have sister episodes if you'd like to watch them.
Mm-hmm. And then Brandon, where can they find your lovely face at?
I've been trying a new podcast with trying to remember the name here. Come back to me.
All right. John P., where can they find you at?
They can find me on Dice Check.
All right.
Yeah, and Jonathan P on Twitter.
Yep. And you guys can find me at 29343 via Espada, Murrieta, California.
Is that the P.O. box?
No, that's it's just an address.
It's an address.
Yeah, it's just an address. What about you, Demeki? Where can they find you at?
Ocean Avenue.
Red light district.
Yeah.
I got it. I've only
Brandon.
done one episode so far.
Yeah.
But Focused Fire is the podcast that I've been trying out recently.
Okay.
Very cool. What do you guys talk about?
40K.
Tactica, lore, anything.
It's mostly tactics.
Gotcha.
Tactica.
Okay.
All right.
With a focus on tournaments.
Okay. Okay. Where can they get that at?
I would just search for Focused Fire 40K podcast.
Okay.
Well, YouTube, Spotify.
It's on their website, so I'm going to type it in here and look it up for you guys.
Go to Google and type in Focus Fire 40K
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah, you guys should be able
It's
to find
at
it.
TFG Radio.
You got it. All right.
Cool.
So that is it for today. Thank you guys for joining us for Chapter Tactics, episode number 211. You guys can catch us every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We are the Dice Check crew, which you guys can check out at youtube.com/Dice Check. You guys can also check out Battle Reports streamed live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dice Check as well. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next episode of Chapter Tactics. And bye, everybody.
Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See ya. Come samnida, y'all.